Welcome back, Defenders. Jake here. Ukraine's done it. Ukraine has liberated another village. Ukraine situation reports, key Donetsk city liberated. Staromaiorske is an important logistics node in western Donetsk Oblast, along a main highway in the region, and only 60 miles from the Sea of Azov. So here are the Ukrainian defenders celebrating their victory.
35-я бригада, а также батальон дружественной теробороны АРИ, выполняя задачу, освободили село Старомaiorske. Слава Украине!
Russia loses again. So what is the significance of liberating Staromaiorske? Yes, it's a small town in southern Ukraine, but this town had been under Russian occupation for 16 months. For 16 months, Russia controlled this village. Now, I'm sure every building has been destroyed and all the people have been evacuated, one direction or another. But the significance that Ukraine can move forward, despite the landmines, despite the artillery, despite the air advantage by Russia, Ukraine is still advancing in every direction. Staromaiorski's liberation confirms the wisdom of the strategy by Ukrainian military commanders to starve, stretch, and strike. So this is a war of attrition. It's not a rapid advance. That's just not possible due to the millions of landmines. But what Ukraine is doing is starving, stretching, and striking Russian positions, and then grabbing land once the Russians in that territory have exhausted themselves. Basically, they can't be resupplied. And the fact that Ukraine can still advance despite not having a real air force, the air force that they should have. So, no time in modern military history is there a precedent for mechanized infantry advancing against an entrenched enemy without strong air supports. So hopefully F-16s will arrive by December or January. That's potentially when we could start seeing more rapid advances. But in the meantime, this is a war of attrition, and Ukraine is going to continue to pick and choose their battles. They're still advancing towards Tokmak, ever so slightly through these minefields. And here is where Staromaiorske is on the map. So this dotted line is the boundary. To the west is Zaporizhia, to the east is Donetsk, and Ukraine has been village hopping basically along this small stream. Every time they chunk forward and capture another village, it makes the trenches and the defense lines of Russian forces to the east and west of these villages, they can't hold it. So eventually the Russian forces here and here are probably going to have to pull back, otherwise they're going to be killed and captured. This is the Surovikin defense line that Ukraine is currently making their progress towards. We don't really know how effective this defense line is going to be. Is Russia properly manning it? Did they do the due diligence to properly fortify this defense line? Yes, you can see it from satellite images, but we don't really know how effective this is going to be if Ukrainian armored vehicles can actually reach it. Other parts of the map we should just quick talk about. Everyone last week was very concerned about these reports of 100,000 Russian soldiers and 900 Russian tanks trying to advance towards Kharkiv, but nope. The regular Russian ground forces are incompetent and they are incapable of advancing. They did make a small map update a couple days ago. The Russians want to reach the town of Borova, but the Ukrainians counterattacked and pushed them back. Russia cannot solidify gains in this area of the map. When we zoom in on Bakhmut, Ukraine continues to make the most progress south of the city. They're still attacking and retaking land in the north. The goal over the coming weeks is to encircle Bakhmut and just turn it into a kill zone. Russia politically can't afford to lose this city after everything they did to take it, so they'll probably fall for the trap and keep resupplying soldiers into the kill zone once Ukraine surrounds it. And here's a really fascinating satellite image where you can visibly see the terrain changing due to this war. So these white specks, these are all clouds, but this is the Novokakhovka Reservoir. It's completely drained and it's turned into a desert. But this green patch right here is the front. Because it's been heavily mined, it's not safe for farmers to clear their fields. So any vegetation that can grow in this area is growing unchecked, and you can visibly see the front line from space because it's so massive. Wow. Here's a tweet I want to share from Azov South. These are Ukrainian military members thanking the United States for sending cluster munitions. Cluster munitions have only been used in the last week, but already Ukrainian forces are saying this is a game changer. One, it's very effective against personnel and soft vehicles, but two, this is just giving them more artillery rounds to fire rather than their usual amounts that they were limited to prior. So here's a fascinating video from Dmitry at War Translated showing what cluster munitions do to soft vehicles such as MLRS systems. So this is a video taken by a Russian soldier showing what happened to his truck after it was hit with a cluster round. So when these bomblets scatter, they shoot out high-velocity shrapnel in every direction, and you can see how effective it is punching through the engine, punching through the tires, punching through the cabin, breaking all the glass of the vehicle. The rockets are still intact. It doesn't look like any shrapnel hit here, but the rest of the vehicle is pretty much useless. So let me now share with you a clip of Vladimir Putin talking about how is this war going. This is at a press conference in St. Petersburg, and of course, this is a friendly reporter giving the president of Russia a softball question. How do you see Ukraine after our victory?
Какой вы видите Украину после нашей победы?
So I'm going to read what Putin says, but once again, it's a simple question. How do you see Ukraine after our victory? The assumption being that Russia is going to win this war. And this is Putin's bizarre answer. Let's not run ahead. I would even shift my answer to your question a little bit. It's clear that they are destroying monuments, renaming everything. There's nothing I can say more. But what I've heard is this. Ukraine is looking for its identity and strives to assert its identity. This alone wouldn't be a problem. What's wrong with that? Ukraine has been an independent state since 1991. That's not what they say on Kremlin State TV. They say all the former Soviet republics are fake countries and they're not really independent. They belong to Russia. But let's get back to Putin's answer. Naturally, it is searching for its identity. But why should its identity be sought based on neo-Nazism? Why should the identity of modern Ukraine be linked to Hitler's collaborators, to people such as Bandera and Shukevich? to people who exterminated 1.5 million Jews. 1.5 million. Do you realize what this figure is? President Zelensky is Jewish. He had family members who were killed by the Nazis in the Holocaust. All of this is nonsense, but let's continue. They exterminated many Russians and Poles. Why should the identity of a modern, independent Ukraine be built on this basis? I am amazed at the stupidity of those people who do this. Yes, now that Ukraine is being used as a tool to fight Russia, this suits our potential adversaries. They are ready to use anything, as they once used Al-Qaeda and other terrorist organizations to fight us in the Caucasus. Al-Qaeda somewhere in Europe is bad. Al-Qaeda used to fight Russia is good. Same thing with Nazism. In general, Nazism is bad. In general, Nazism is bad. So Putin is an idiot. He is not a scholar. He is not well read. He has not studied history too closely. But somehow he convinced himself that he is this important historical figure that is going to reconstitute the Russian Empire. Every time he references history, he's pretty lackadaisical about it. And once again, the question is, how do you see Ukraine after our victory? All the dude has to say is, we're going to win, and what remains of Ukraine doesn't really matter, because Russia is going to win this war. That's all he had to say, but instead he starts rambling about Nazism and Al-Qaeda. So to give you contrast, here's a tweet from yesterday from Ukraine's Ministry of Defense. Just saying, in Ukraine we don't say when the war ends. We say when we win. Ukraine is going to win this war. Russia's going to lose. And Putin keeps giving these bumbling answers where he doesn't look confident. He doesn't look confident in his military. He doesn't look confident in his generals. He doesn't look confident in his people. New drone attack on Moscow damages Moscow city towers, injuring one person. So Ukraine, or Russian partisans, launched another drone attack against the city of Moscow. I don't think these drones are coming from Ukraine. They're not flying 500 kilometers. So somebody in Russia is launching these drone attacks, and Russia can't do anything to stop them. They're going to continue. So I'll link the video down below if you want to see the moment of impact. I can't show it on YouTube. But what was struck was a Ministry of Economic Development office on the 10th floor of this skyscraper. So 6 different government ministries occupy this government building, and it's protected by the FSO. So this is what the building in Moscow looks like driving on the highway. The drone attack occurred very early in the morning. There shouldn't have been any workers in the building. I don't support Ukrainian drone attacks that could potentially kill civilians, but if it's a government building, it's a valid military target. So this is pretty noticeable. How did Russian state TV cover the drone attack this morning? Russian state TV networks ignore latest drone attacks. So Channel 1 in Moscow didn't know how to cover this, didn't know how to talk about it. They're waiting for their talking points from the Kremlin. So instead they just covered the Russian Navy parade in St. Petersburg and showed more clips of Putin speaking at the Russia-Africa Summit. So yeah, a skyscraper in their downtown was struck by a drone, and they're choosing not to talk about it because they don't have an answer. United States says Shoigu looking for weapons in North Korea. So Defense Minister Sergei Shoigu wrapped up his trip to North Korea, in which he's begging Kim Jong-un for military assistance. North Korean propaganda is so fascinating to watch. So I'm going to hit you with 30 seconds of this clip.
위대한 조국해방전쟁 승리 72세 즈음에서 우리나라를 축하 방문했던 국방상 세르게이 쇼이구 동지를 단장으로 하는 러시아 연방 군사 대표단이 27일 평양을 출발했습니다. 평양 국제비행장.
So this is the farewell propaganda clip. This is the plane that Shoigu arrived on. So the only thing happening is Shoigu's going to pull up in his car. He's going to be saluted. He's going to shake some hands. You know that North Korea has a more powerful military because this man's hat is bigger. Shoigu probably should have worn a bigger hat. But Shoigu's saluting, he's getting a farewell, he's being saluted, being saluted some more, he's walking, and then he's going to get on the plane and salute everyone and say, that was a total waste of time. So North Korean propaganda is weird because nobody sees it. This is what the country of North Korea looks like from space at night. 26 million people living in darkness because they don't have electricity. They don't have televisions. North Korea generates propaganda for their people and nobody sees it because they don't have electricity or TVs. This is the capital city of Pyongyang. There's a couple yellow dots, which are probably military installations running on diesel generators. But you can see China lit up. This is Russia over here. This is South Korea. This is Japan. And the North Koreans live in darkness. And I'm sure Shoigu, with his facial expressions, was giving away how insane this is, sending him to North Korea to ask for help. Look at this North Korean general. Look at all the medals on his uniform, even below his belt. Nobody in the North Korean military is a combat veteran. None of these guys have seen war. The Korean War was 75 years ago, so the veterans of that war are all 90 or 100 years old. So what do you have to do as a North Korean general to get all of this gold and brass when you've never commanded troops in the field? You've never seen combat. Meanwhile, Shoigu has this very modest and pathetic ribbon rack. So to recap, if you lead an armed rebellion, shoot down Russian planes, and kill Russian pilots, you'll be invited to the African summit in St. Petersburg. You can wear jeans and a polo and shake hands with African dictators. But if you're loyal to Vladimir Putin, he's going to send you to North Korea to eat year-old kimchi and beg this guy for help. It's just so funny. The African Union calls for the restoration of the Black Sea grain deal. Some of the African leaders who attended this conference in St. Petersburg used it as an opportunity to express their frustration, to tell Vladimir Putin he has to allow Ukraine to export their agricultural products because the continent of Africa depends on it. And I don't think people understand the scale. So here's the nation of Egypt. What do you think the population of Egypt actually is? And there are 110 million people in Egypt. That's greater than the population of Germany, greater than the population of France. Egypt has a lot of people, and they don't have a lot of good farmland. So they are a net importer of food, and they will always be a net importer of food until they get serious about birth control. So Russia, by blocking Ukraine, is going to cause famine and starvation within the coming months. If Russia successfully blocks all of these agricultural exports, then North Africa and the Middle East, which have very large populations and they can't grow enough food to sustain their own people, it's going to get bad. So Putin promises free grain for 6 African countries. Okay, how much is he offering? Putin announced at the St. Petersburg African Summit that he would send up to 50,000 tons of free grain to 6 African nations. 50,000 tons, that sounds like a lot, right? Well, in the last year, Ukraine exported 33 million tons of grain. So Russia's going to block, over the coming months and year, potentially tens of millions of tons of Ukrainian grain, but they're going to donate 50,000 tons. That's a joke. That's an insult. Putin is assuming that the people of Africa suck at math, and they won't blame him once food prices start skyrocketing. Here's a clip from Dmitry at War Translated I want you guys to see. This is taking place in the occupied city of Berdyansk. So Russia has controlled the city of Berdyansk for 18 months, occupying it, and a Kremlin propagandist by the name of Sladkov is with a team of workers basically repairing roads. They're fixing asphalt. And this guy is driving around the city angry that Ukrainians are not changing over their license plates.
Но номера не все меняют. Видите? Украинских номеров много. Люди не торопятся. Вот. Украинский номер. Украинский номер. Украинский номер. Не торопятся люди менять. Мы меняем в Бердянске асфальтовое покрытие, а они не меняют номера. Значит, еще не эквивалентный обмен.
So Berdyansk has been occupied for a year and a half, and the residents of the city don't want to change their license plates to Russian plates. He's so close to understanding that the people of this city don't want to be Russian. He'll get it. He'll get it eventually. Ukrainian intelligence saboteurs blow up a warehouse in occupied Crimea. Crimea has been occupied by the Russians for 9 years, and there are still people on the peninsula holding out to be reunified with Ukraine, to be liberated. Saboteurs are going to continue feeding locations and information to the Ukrainian military until the Russians are all expelled. Here's a new poll from the Washington Post showing that 76% of Americans, including 71% of Republicans, agree it's important to the United States that Ukraine wins this war. So here's the paragraph from the article that I think you should see. The House recently held its first votes on aid to Ukraine since the Republicans took control of the House of Representatives in January. And on vote after vote, the vast majority of Republicans repeatedly voted to beat back amendments proposed by the anti-Ukraine faction. So these are people like Marjorie Taylor Greene and Florida Representative Matt Gaetz. They like Russia and they hate Ukraine, and they're very vocal on social media. And Matt Gaetz's amendments prohibiting security assistance for Ukraine failed spectacularly by a vote of 358 to 70, including 149 House Republicans. So that's 7 out of 10 House Republicans choosing to continue to militarily support Ukraine. It's probably 9 out of 10 Democrats. So these are very strong numbers. I think this September there's going to be another vote in Congress to fund Ukraine's military efforts for another year, basically for the rest of 2024. And where it stands now, I don't see how McCarthy would block this vote. I think it's going to happen, and I think the United States is going to continue providing military assistance for Ukraine for the rest of 2023 and through the fiscal year in 2024. So this is very, very encouraging news. Here's another poll conducted by the new program for public consultation. Here's the question. Do you favor or oppose the U.S. continuing to provide military assistance to Ukraine, including military equipment, ammunition, training, and intelligence? So those who were polled, 55% of Republicans support, 87% of Democrats, 58% of independents. Overall, nationwide, 69%. So these are really good numbers. If you're a politician running for public office in the United States, this is a winning issue for you. We're not risking any of our soldiers' lives. Just by providing military assistance to Ukraine, this is both the right thing to do and incredibly popular here in the United States. Last couple stories I want to share with you. The first one is a Russian cruise ship that attempted to dock in Georgia, full of Russians, and local activists in Georgia gave them an unfriendly welcome. Lots of people at the ports protesting the arrival of these Russian tourists. They came with colorful signs, and after a couple days, when the ship finally departed, they send them off playing music that they should be familiar with by this time. So as the cruise ship departed, they blasted the Ukrainian national anthem. Well done. Final clip I have for you is the city of Odesa. This is from the street life in Odesa as of 2 nights ago. Yes, the downtown and the port district are being struck with missiles and drones almost every night, but the residents and the city of Odesa remains defiant, and I just want to share a little bit of what their nightlife, street culture looks like.
Давайте разом поспіваємо «Ой, Лузі». Друзі, ви зі мною, так? Для хлопців наших, які захищають нашу країну. Ой, у лузі червона калина, ви ще чогось наша славна Україна журилася, а ми тую червону калину підіймемо, а ми нашу славну Україну розвеселимо. Не хилися, червона калина, маєш гарний цвіт. Не журися, славна Україна, маєш вільний рід. А ми тую червону калину підіймемо, а ми нашу славну Україну, розвеселимо.
Ukraine is going to win this war. That's all for this update video. Glory to Ukraine, glory to the heroes. If you found this video informative, give me a thumbs up. Best way to support the channel. Comments and questions, let me know down below. I love hearing from you guys. Till the next video, keep defending the truth, keep defending democracy.